Earlier I said that I would show you how to do a radial pulse as part of the secondary mental health survey, and that's what I want to show you in this video. Now before I show you, I want to remind you of a couple of things. First of all, this is not something we want to do with somebody who's feeling very uncomfortable with us, or if we're feeling really uncomfortable with them, because getting into somebody's physical proximity or touching them in this circumstance, if they're not comfortable, it's going to escalate things further. So this is something we're going to do if we're a trusted individual. If there's a circumstance where we can take a person's pulse because they're fading in and out of consciousness, for example, that sort of thing. Now the second thing I want to point out to you is that we're going to take the pulse on the wrist, which is the radial pulse, and not here on the carotid, because the carotid artery is probably one of the last places we would lose our pulse. So if you can feel a pulse here, it doesn't necessarily mean that the person isn't in shock. Taking a radial pulse would indicate to us, if we can't find it, that a person's blood pressure is very low or that they're in shock, and that may be the reason why their blood pressure is so low. One last thing, this isn't something we're going to just do one time. If we can do it a couple of times or 3 times as we're waiting for the paramedics to arrive, then that's what we want to do, because we can document that the rate of the person's heart has been getting better or worse or staying the same. Alright, let's put the camera down here. One of the most important things to remember when we're doing this is, if possible, we want to try and start with the left hand of the person, because the left hand is the one where the pulse is a little bit more likely to be found easily. If you can't find it in the left, then move to the right. If a person's sleeve is up, slide it down, because the pulse actually acts, the sleeve can act like a tourniquet and actually stop the person from being able to get circulation fully into their lower arm. So in order to do this correctly, you're going to need these 2 fingers. Don't take the pulse with your thumb, because if you use your thumb, you're going to actually potentially feel your own pulse. Your thumb does have a job. It's going to go underneath here to provide some positive pressure. The simplest way to remember this is I landmark right here off this area where there's a little divot, and you can feel as you do this that the thumb actually meets the metacarpals here, and the carpals meet here, so that you actually have this little divot. You're going to take your middle finger, your rude finger, and you're going to put it right behind there, and you should be able to feel the person's pulse. Now, in this particular instance, no problem finding the pulse. But if I hadn't been able to find it, in this particular instance, I can actually see where there are veins here, and that actually is a bit of a hint for me if I have to find it. Now, once I've got the pulse, in order to minimize the amount of contact that I have with this person, I'm going to simply time for 15 seconds and count silently, and then later on I'll multiply the result by 4 in order to get the beats per minute. So I'm going to time now for 15 seconds. Alright, so I counted 20 beats in that time, so that means that we have a pulse of 80 beats per minute. Again, I would check the pulse again in 3 minutes or so if the person's comfortable with me doing that, and I would compare the pulse this time and the next time. And I want to document what I'm doing. While I'm in this position, I can also take note of the person's respirations and make sure that I'm asking them questions that are orienting questions. An orienting question, remember, is a question that a person should be able to answer relatively easily, such as, where are you, or what day of the week is it? So those are important pieces of our secondary survey. Lastly, I want to remind you, don't do the secondary survey if the person has life-threatening circumstances. That's where we're going to deal with their first order things, their breathing, their circulation, their bleeding and heart rate, that sort of thing. Okay, thanks very much.